Good morning, everyone. Is it settled? Committee, we're going to take up quickly Senate Bill 4, which we talked about yesterday. On your desks is an amendment. This has got to go over to Triple E. So this is an amendment that was suggested after we brought this up. It simply says that this is the Kagan bill. It has to do with violations, and it just says the first violation is not subject to the penalty. The idea being that there are a lot of a lot of treasurers are out there, all volunteer people, and they need time to understand what's going on and to make sure that we don't jack somebody up for no good reason, and that they learn. The important part is that they learn. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? You oppose the amendment? Okay. Okay. As the bill as amended. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Four. Yep. Okay. Beautiful. Thank you all. All right. Let's move on and begin with the subcommittee reports to the full committee. And we're going to go with EBA first. Whenever you're ready, Senator King.
Thank you, Chair.
Just as a point of reference, too, we need to be on the floor at 11. We got a lot to get through.
I'll talk fast. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank the members of my subcommittee from this year, Senator Jack Bailey and Senator Paul Quarterman and Senator Joanne Benson. Great committee staff, and it's been such a pleasure working with them. Matthew Bazard, the committee staff, the budget analyst, Natalie Andrade, Sarah Baker, Catherine Barber, Scott Benson, Connor Brown, Patrick Frank, Andrew Gray, Madeline Miller, Dave Propert, Yashadara Rai, Micah Richards, and Elizabeth Weibel, and Mary Beth Brisky, who edited this document. Starting on page 1 for the Board of Public Works, the subcommittee adopted narrative requesting a report from the Maryland Zoo. On pages 2 and 3, the Governor's Office for Children, the subcommittee added a back of the bill section for the annual report on out-of-home placements. On page 4, for the Maryland Office of the Inspector General for Education, subcommittee adopted narrative requesting a report on the local education agencies that required subpoenas to access their records. On pages 5 through 10 for the Department of Information Technology, subcommittee reduced funds for major information technology development projects and reduced personnel funds to increase budgeted turnover for new positions. The subcommittee restricted funds pending one report on agency artificial intelligence, AI, implementation, and adopted 3 pieces of narrative requesting a report on agency AI utilization, a report on Maryland benefits, and the submission of out-year cost estimates for major information technology development projects with the fiscal 2028 allowance. On pages 11 through 15 for the Department of General Services, the subcommittee restricted funds pending the submission of 2 reports on corrective actions related to audit findings and a status report on the maximization of state assets. The subcommittee also adopted 3 pieces of narrative requesting reports on state center agency relocation, the utilization of the strategic energy investment funds, and the critical maintenance backlog projects. On page 16, for the Department of Labor, the subcommittee reduced funds for the Dwyer Workforce Development Grant. Pages 17 through 35 discuss the Maryland State Department of Education, MSDE, including headquarters, aid to education, funding for educational organizations, and early childhood development. On pages 17 through 23, for MSDE headquarters, the subcommittee restricted funds pending the submission of a report on corrective actions related to audit findings. Subcommittee also adopted narrative requesting 7 total reports. This includes 4 annual reports on program updates and data, 2 reports on a free driver education implementation plan, and the qualifications of local education agencies' chief financial officers, and 1 report from the Maryland Center for School Safety on the Safe Schools Fund balance. On pages 24 through 29, for MSDE Aid to Education, subcommittee deleted funds for the Liana Leadership Foundation, which is no longer in operation, and reduced funds for the Adult High School Pilot Program. Subcommittee also adopted language expressing the intent of the General Assembly that public school counselors with national board certifications receive salary increases equal to those received by public school teachers with the certification. Additionally, the subcommittee adopted narrative requesting 5 annual reports on program updates and data. On pages 30 through 33, for MSDE funding for educational organizations, the subcommittee restored the broadening options and opportunities for students today, BOOST, programs, administrative and reporting requirements, and made technical corrections to the BOOST program eligibility language. On pages 34 and 35, for MSDE Early Childhood Development, the subcommittee adopted narrative requesting reports on the Child Care Scholarship Program, waitlist, and quarterly expenditures, and the Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Support Services. On pages 36 and 37, for the Accountability and Implementation Board, the subcommittee adopted narrative requesting a status report on blueprint implementation. On page 38, for the University of Maryland College Park campus, the subcommittee adopted language to reduce funds due to the end of a mandate. On pages 39 and 40, for the University of Maryland Global Campus, the subcommittee adopted narrative requesting reports on a national marketing campaign and the reintegration of 2 entities that were previously spun off as high-impact economic development activities. On pages 41 through 47, for the Maryland Higher Education Commission, the subcommittee reduced funds and adopted language restricting funds pending submission of 4 reports on the budgetary details of financial aid programs, errors made in the Guaranteed Access Awards program, and changes made to the Teaching Fellows for Maryland program, the Next Generation Scholars program, and actions taken in response to audit findings. Subcommittee also adopted 2 pieces of narrative requesting a report on the cost to lower the credit completion requirements for community college students to maintain their educational excellence awards, and the impact of credit completion requirements for all students receiving educational excellence awards. On pages 48 and 49, for the state support for higher education institutions, the first item is technical and reflects an action previously taken by the subcommittee. Subcommittee also adopted narrative requesting a report on faculty workloads. On page 50, for Baltimore City Community College, the subcommittee adopted narrative requesting a report on enrollment and the Mayor's Scholars Program. On pages 51 through 53, for the Department of Commerce, the subcommittee reduced funds that were over budgeted in error and reduced funds for the Maryland State Arts Council. The subcommittee also adopted language restricting funds pending submission of a report on the Small Minority and Women-Owned Business Account. Additionally, the subcommittee has reconsidered a DLS recommendation and moves to adopt a $2 million general fund reduction from the Biotechnology Investment Incentive tax credit in the Department of Commerce. And finally, the subcommittee moves to adopt an additional page for a $4 million reduction for erroneous conviction payments in the Board of Public Works, since there is funding in the dedicated purpose account for this purpose. I move adoption of the subcommittee report as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Any questions? Okay, all those in favor of the subcommittee report?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes our subcommittee report as amended.
Very good. Public safety.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'd like to thank the members of my subcommittee. And I would like to say thank you for the opportunity to take this new role this year. Thank you very much to members of the subcommittee, Senator Jim Rosapep, Senator Karen Lewis Young, and Senator Johnny Ray Salling. I'd also like to thank Deneen Banks and Kelly Norton, who have been right there with us throughout this session. Also, many thanks to the budget analysts, Scott Benson, Suveksha Bujal, Andrew Gray, Victoria Martinez, Madeline Miller, Kelly Norton, Sam Quist, Micah Richards, Yeshadara Rai, Elizabeth Wabel, and Josh Weinstock, and to Brett Ogden, who formatted and edited the document. On pages 1 through 8 in the judiciary, the subcommittee added language restricting funds for the appointed attorney program to the intended purposes. The subcommittee also added reductions totaling approximately $13 million for 9 purposes, one of which reduces contractual employee salary increases. The subcommittee moves to increase the reduction for salary increases from $1.3 million to $2.5 million. Additionally, the subcommittee has reconsidered a DLS recommendation and moves to reduce general funds to abolish 3 new positions in the St. Mary's County Circuit Court. The subcommittee adopted 8 pieces of narrative requesting reports. In the Office of the Public Defender, on pages 9 through 11, the subcommittee reduced general funds to increase budgeted turnover. The subcommittee added 3 pieces of language restricting funds to the intended purpose, reduced the proposed deficiency appropriation, and adopted committee narrative on panel attorney caseloads and expenditures. In the Office of the Attorney General, on pages 12 and 13, the subcommittee reduced special funds and adopted 2 pieces of narrative on the Access to Counsel and Evictions Program and the Federal Accountability Unit. On pages 14 through 16 in the Public Service Commission, the subcommittee adopted 2 pieces of narrative requesting reports on residential utility terminations and arrearages and the use of funds transferred from the dedicated purpose account to PSC. The subcommittee also added special fund reduction to increase the turnover expectancy and added a technical amendment in the budget bill language to align closely with the applicable legislation. On page 17, for the Uninsured Employers Fund, the subcommittee restricted funds pending a report on operational needs. There is an additional page for your consideration. The subcommittee moves to adopt an additional page for committee narrative on the fiscal condition of UEF. In the Maryland Energy Administration, on pages 18 through 22, the subcommittee added 2 pieces of language restricting funds pending the submission of reports on MEA funding and a report providing explanations on fund cancellations at fiscal 2026 closeout. The subcommittee adopted 3 pieces of narrative. The subcommittee also added language making funds contingent on legislation authorizing expanded use of the funds. In the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy, on pages 23 through 29, the subcommittee added language restricting funds pending submission of 3 reports. The subcommittee added language restricting a portion of the state aid for police protection based on compliance with the Maryland Sexual Assault Kit Initiative Victim Notification Protocol. The subcommittee adopted narrative requesting a report on outcome managing for results measures and reduced the fiscal 2026 working appropriation because federal funding is unavailable. On pages 30 and 31 in the Department of Planning, the subcommittee added language restricting funding pending a report on permitting and added technical amendments in the budget bill language to align it more closely with the applicable Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act provision for the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. In the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, on pages 32 through 37, the subcommittee deleted funding for one new position and adopted 5 pieces of narrative. The subcommittee also added technical amendments in the budget bill language to align closely with the applicable Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act provisions for the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. In the Department of Veterans and Military Families, on pages 38 and 39, the subcommittee adopted 2 pieces of narrative and requesting quarterly reports on the operations of the Charlotte Hall Veterans Home and the Maryland Joint Forces Initiative. On page 40, in the Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund, the subcommittee adopted 2 pieces of narrative. On page 41, in the Office of the Correctional Ombudsman, the subcommittee adopted 1 piece of committee narrative requesting a report on the status of the agencies managing for results, measures, objectives, and data. On pages 42 and 43, in the Maryland Insurance Administration, the subcommittee adopted 2 pieces of narrative requesting a report on the status of the Insurance Tracking System project and a report on the Affordable Care Act segregated account data. For the Comptroller of Maryland, on page 44, the subcommittee added technical amendments in the budget bill language to align closely with the applicable Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act provisions for the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. In the Department of Transportation, on pages 45 and 46, the subcommittee added annual budget bill language requiring notification of changes to the capital program. On pages 47 through 50 for the Department of Transportation Secretary's Office, the subcommittee added annual language restricting operating and capital grants and 2 pieces of narrative on apprenticeships and the disadvantaged businesses enterprise recertification. The subcommittee also added language restricting funds pending a report on the resolution of Maryland Transportation Authority customer toll billing and collections issues. In the Department of Transportation debt service requirements, on pages 51 through 53, the subcommittee added 2 pieces of annual language establishing debt limits and requiring debt reports. In the State Highway Administration, on pages 54 and 55, the subcommittee added a technical amendment in the budget bill language to align closely with the applicable legislation and adopted narrative requesting 2 reports on federal fund reimbursements and a traffic safety plan for Maryland 410. In the Maryland Port Administration, on page 56, the subcommittee adopted narrative requesting reports on the Howard Street Tunnel project and federal fund reimbursements. In the Maryland Transit Administration, on pages 57 and 58, the subcommittee adopted narrative requesting reports on the Purple Line and Red Line projects. There is an additional page for your consideration. The subcommittee moves to adopt an additional page for language restricting funds for the purpose of providing matching grant funds. In the Maryland Aviation Administration, on page 59, the subcommittee added language restricting funds pending a report on noise abatement at Martin State Airport. In the Maryland Transportation Authority, on page 60, the subcommittee adopted narrative requesting reports on the Francis Scott Key Bridge reconstruction. On pages 61 through 65, in the Department of Natural Resources, the subcommittee adopted 3 pieces of narrative requesting reports. The subcommittee added a back of the bill section expressing intent on a Deep Creek Watershed Management Plan reactivation report. The subcommittee restricted funding pending confirmation of the Port of Deposit State Historical Park land transfer. In the Maryland Department of Agriculture, on pages 66 through 68, the subcommittee adopted narrative on agricultural industry apprenticeships and restricted funds pending resolution of audit findings. The subcommittee reduced general funds for the Maryland Leaders in Environmentally Engaged Farming Program. On pages 69 through 75, in the Administration and Offices function of the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, the subcommittee added 5 pieces of budget language restricting funds pending reports on major IT projects, healthcare contract oversight, overtime costs, hiring and attrition, and private home monitoring oversight, and adopted 2 pieces of committee narrative requesting reports on impacts from the Justice Reinvestment Act and recidivism data. On pages 76 through 80, in the corrections function of the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, the subcommittee adopted 3 pieces of committee narrative requesting reports on the treatment of transgender individuals, women's pre-release programming, and the rollout of the Reentry Passport Program. In the community supervision function of the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, on pages 81 through 83. The subcommittee added one piece of budget language restricting funds pending a report on geriatric and medical parole, and adopted three pieces of committee narrative requesting reports on parole and probation agent caseloads, providing protective equipment to community supervision agents, and the implementation of the Division of Parole and Probation's delayed risk assessment tool. In the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services pretrial detention and services function on pages 84 and 85, the subcommittee added one piece of budget language restricting funds pending a report on the department's efforts to comply with the Duval versus Moore consent decree, and adopted one piece of committee narrative requesting a report on the federal contract to operate the Chesapeake Detention Facility. On pages 86 and 87 in the Department of the Environment, the subcommittee deleted double budgeted funds for wastewater treatment plant operation and maintenance grants, and adopted narrative on a building energy performance standards report. There is an additional page for your consideration. The subcommittee moves to adopt an additional page for language restricting funds pending a report from MDE on septic system regulations. On page 88 in the Maryland Environmental Service, the subcommittee adopted narrative requesting an annual funding statement. In the Department of Juvenile Services, on page 89, the subcommittee adopted narrative requesting a report on the substance abuse program that DJS plans to open. In the Department of State Police, on pages 90 through 93, the subcommittee adopted three pieces of narrative on quarterly reports on personnel measures, registered apprenticeship opportunities, and workforce diversity strategies. The subcommittee added a section of the budget bill restricting funds pending the submission of the 2025 Uniform Crime Report. I move for the adoption of the subcommittee report as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Questions for the subcommittee on the report? Seeing none, all those in favor of the report and the associated papers? Yep. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Health and Human Services. Senator, whenever you're ready.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. First, I'd like to thank my subcommittee members. I think it's appropriate to thank Senator Malcolm Augustine, Senator J.B. Jennings, and Senator Craig Zucker. I would be remiss if I did not take the opportunity to also thank committee staff, Philip Anthony, the budget analysts, Natalie Andrade, Sylvester Bugel, Ann Braun, Connor Brown, Emily Haskell, Naomi Camaro, Victoria Martinez, David Propert, Yashara Ra, Micah Richards, Elizabeth Waybell, and Tanya Zimmerman. And I'd also like to thank Dominic Sinelli, who edited this respective report. Mr. Chair, beginning with the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing, on pages 1 through 3, the subcommittee deleted a vacant position and added language restricting funding pending the submission of a letter on the status of regulations and a report on vacancies. On pages 4 through 6 in the Department of Aging, the subcommittee reduced funds to increase the turnover expectancy and adopted narrative requesting reports on the implementation of the Supporting Older Adults with Resources or SOAR program and managing for results measures for the SOAR program. In the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, on page 7, the subcommittee adopted narrative requesting a report on measures implemented to reduce case backlogs. On page 8 and 9, in the Military Department, the subcommittee added language restricting funds pending submission of a report on the Free State Challenge Academy and adopted narrative requesting submission on the TRICARE premium reimbursement MFR measures. On page 10, Mr. Chair, in the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange, we adopted narrative requesting a report on cost estimates for the state reinsurance and state subsidy programs. On page 11, in the West North Avenue Development Authority, the subcommittee adopted narrative requesting information on anticipated spending with the fiscal 2028 budget submission. In the State Department of Assessments and Taxation, on pages 12 and 13, the subcommittee added language restricting funds pending a status update on major IT project and deleted one long-term vacant position. On pages 14 and 15, in the Property Tax Assessment Appeals Board, the subcommittee added language restricting funds pending submission of a report on paper-based processes and adopted committee narrative requesting a report on vacancies and backlog cases. Actions related to the Maryland Department of Health are on pages 16 through 51. First, beginning on page 16, in administration, the subcommittee added language restricting funds pending a report on staffing at the Pediatric Overstay Unit at the John L. Gildner Riker, and adopted narrative requesting a report on staffing at state hospitals. Mr. Chair, I also move to adopt language restricting funds pending the submission of a report on the placement of patients at the state forensic hospitals as shown on the additional page that you have on your desk. On pages 19 and 20, in the Office of Healthcare Quality, the subcommittee added language restricting funds pending the submission of a report on the long-term care program complaint investigation backlog and a report on a memorandum of understanding with Montgomery County for nursing home survey activities. In the Health Professional Boards and Commissions, on pages 21 through 24, the subcommittee added language restricting funds pending reports on the Board of Professional Counselors and Therapists evaluation recommendation updates, the impact of fund balance transfers on the boards, and the submission of prescription label regulations. The subcommittee also adopted narrative requesting that total licenses and complaint rates for the Board of Nursing be included in their MFR submission. On pages 25 and 26, in the Prevention of Health Promotion Administration, the subcommittee amended language to align with a related BRFA provision, reducing the tobacco use funding mandate and increased the amount of general fund reduction, contingent on a provision to align with the proposed mandate level. The subcommittee also added language restricting funds pending a report on screening and treatment of children's health conditions. Actions related to behavioral health administration begin on page 27. First, the subcommittee added language restricting funds pending the submission of several items, a report on efforts to strengthen the behavioral health workforce, the status of corrective actions related to repeat audit findings, non-Medicaid provider reimbursement data, the fiscal 2028 budget with community service providers reimbursement spending budgeted separately, and a report on the timelines of payments to local core service agencies. The subcommittee had added language restricting funds in a community services program to be used to support peer recovery, specialist certification, and internships. The subcommittee also adopted narrative requesting a report on financing options for long-acting injectable medication. And we added annual language to 2 programs restricting funds for provider reimbursements to that purpose. In addition, I move adopt language restricting funds pending the submission of a report on the agency's transition to the new ASO as shown on the additional page on your desk. Under Medicaid, beginning on page 35, the subcommittee added language restricting funds pending reports on home and community-based services and corrective actions related to the most recent audit. The subcommittee added language on page 37 to 39 expressing intent that MDH form a work group and restricted funds pending a report on the work group's activity. However, upon reconsideration, the subcommittee proposes to withdraw this language. The subcommittee added language restricting funds for provider reimbursements for Medicaid, the Maryland Children's Health Program, and Medicaid-related behavioral health reimbursements to those purposes or for certain other transfers. The subcommittee added language to make funding from the Cigarette Restitution Fund contingent on a BRFA provision and amended 2 pieces of contingent language to better align with related BRFA provisions. The subcommittee reduced funds to account for end-stage renal disease patients cover under Medicare, for a fiscal 2026 deficiency to account for reduced spending for prior year's claims, and for a fiscal 2026 deficiency to account for medical loss ratio recoveries. The subcommittee adopted 2 pieces of narrative requesting 2 reports on the HR 1, One Big Beautiful Bill Act implementation, and 1 report on reimbursable fund spending and behavioral health Medicaid. Beginning on page 48, in the Health Regulatory Commissions, the subcommittee added language restricting funds pending a report on market stabilization for Medicare Advantage plans, adopted narrative requesting a report on primary care initiatives, and amended language as a technical correction for a contingent special fund reduction. In addition, I move to adopt narrative requesting a report on temporary staffing contracts as shown on the additional page on your desk. Subcommittee actions pertaining to Department of Health, Department Human Services begin on page 51 in the Office of the Secretary. The subcommittee reduced funds for the Constituent Service Call Center into systems. We also added language restricting funds pending a report on the fiscal 2026 closeout information. Actions pertaining to the Social Services Administration begin on page 55. The subcommittee adopted 4 pieces of language restricting funds pending submission on reports on children and youth stays in hospitals, hotels, and other unlicensed settings, caseload data and caseworker positions, confirmation of the posting of monthly child welfare services data, status of corrective actions related to the most recent fiscal compliance audit, and costs associated with children and youth in out-of-home placements placed in hotels. The subcommittee also adopted committee narrative requesting 2 reports on the implementation of provisions of the Family First Prevention Services Act and on child fatalities. Next, on page 63 and 64, Mr. Chair, the subcommittee adopted 2 sections. One section withholds funds in the Social Services Administration and the Maryland Department of Health, pending the submission of a letter confirming submission of a Medicaid state plan amendment of out-of-home placements. The second withholds funds in these 2 agencies pending the submission of a report on pediatric hospital overstay coordinators. On page 65 and 66, in the Foster Care Maintenance and Child Welfare Services Program, the subcommittee adopted 2 pieces of language restricting funds to that purpose for the fiscal 2027 appropriation and fiscal 2026 deficiency appropriation. On pages 67 through 69 in the Child Support Administration, we've reduced funds for non-custodial parent employment and training contracts and adopted 2 pieces of narrative requesting reports on child support performance and the Child Support Reinvestment Fund. The subcommittee also reduced funds for a fiscal 2026 deficiency for the Constituent Services Call Center and the Family Investment Administration. Beginning on page 70, the subcommittee reduced federal funds for the SNAP administrative match to reflect the change in the match rate in a program that has been repealed. The subcommittee added 3 pieces of language requesting quarterly reports on application processing and case closures, a report on the inflationary adjustment for benefits, and a report on the timeline for reducing the SNAP payment error rate penalties. The subcommittee also reduced funds for a program that has been repealed and adopted committee narrative on the Sunbucks program. The subcommittee added language in the Assistant Payments Program restricting funds to that purpose, reduced SNAP funds to better align with recent trends, and reduced fiscal 2026 funds that were not needed to support costs in the federal government shutdown. In the Office of Home Energy Programs, beginning on page 79, the subcommittee added language restricting funds pending submission of a report with application processing times and denial rates for energy assistance and reduced general funds for personal expenses. The subcommittee also adopted committee narrative requesting MFR data for fiscal 2026. Lastly, Mr. Chair, in the Department of Housing and Community Development on page 82, the subcommittee added 2 pieces of language to make contingencies more specific to relevant BRFA provisions. In addition, the subcommittee would like to adopt 4 additional pages for the Department of Housing and Community Development. The first adds language expressing intent that the community action agencies be defined as emergency providers, and the second adds language restricting funds pending the submission of a report on vacant properties in Baltimore City. The other pages include narrative requesting reports on apprenticeship in the housing industry and housing development opportunities at rail, mass transit stops. I move adoption of the subcommittee report as amended, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any questions for the subcommittee on their report? Seeing none, all those in favor as presented with the sheets? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Okay. We're going to take just a little pause. Don't get too comfortable. Okay, here we go again. We're going to do the capital budget pay-go section. Capital budget Chairman.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Here to present the pay-go part of the capital budget. What this is not this is not including legislative bond initiatives or other miscellaneous capital funding related to the general obligation bonds. This is the cash part of the operating budget. Pleased to be joined by Madeline Miller, Vice Chair McCray, Deneen Banks, but really also wanted to thank the other subcommittee partners, Senator Paul Quarterman, Senator Shelley Heddleman, Senator J.B. Jennings, Senator Nancy King, and Senator Jim Roosevelt. And again, Mr. Vice Chair, thank you for all your leadership. Deneen Banks, thank you again. Also other budget analysts, Sarah Baker, Catherine Barber, Saviksha Bahugel, Andrew Gray, Emily Haskell, Madeline Miller, Yashudha Rai, Elizabeth Weibel, Josh Weinstock, Matthew Klein, and again, thank you, Ms. Miller, and as well as Emily Kozak, who edited this document. Turning to page 1 of your committee report dealing with the Department of Natural Resources requires a report from Baltimore City regarding program open space direct grant funds. With that concludes the subcommittee report, and I'd move adoption.
Brilliant. Any questions for the subcommittee chair?
I hear a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to full committee. Yeah. Do whatever you need to do. So Jacob, when they first handed it, okay, we all ready? Evidently not. I see people running. Great. Okay, full committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll be going over a few documents. There is a decision document packet, a white decision document packet labeled Senate Budget and Taxation Committee, Full Committee. We'll be going through these items and then referring to the yellow additional page packet that's titled Senate Budget and Taxation Committee, additional pages. Starting on page 1, for payments of civil divisions of the state, DLS recommended concurring with the governor's allowance, and the agency concurred.
We're just going to let you roll.
Page 2 for the General Assembly of Maryland, recommendation is to concur with the budget as approved by the Legislative Policy Committee.
Concur.
On page 3, for the Department of Social and Economic Mobility, DLS recommendation was to concur with governor's allowance. The agency concurred. However, as you can see on the yellow packet, page 1, there's a narrative restricting funds until the agency submits a report on the MBE certification processing time improvements.
Okay, we'll adopt. Any, and if anybody has any questions along the way, just jump in. I'm just going to keep moving as quickly as possible.
On page 4, for the State Board of Elections in the white packet, there's narrative requesting quarterly reports on all major information technology development projects, and the agency concurred.
Adopt.
On page 6, action 1 for the Department of Budget and Management Secretary, DLS recommended amending section 2 to limit appropriations that can be placed into contingency reserve to the items restricted by the General Assembly only. The agency disagreed as this action limits executive authority.
Adopt.
On page 7, action 2, DLS recommended amending section 17 to add the tracking structure necessary for legislative audits and to disallow transfers for other purposes, and the agency disagreed as this limits executive authority.
Adopt.
For items 3 through 8 from pages 9 to 15, these are all annual recommendations. So if you'd like, Mr. Chair, we can handle these as a consent calendar. The agency all concurred.
Yep, adopt.
On page 18, action 9, DLS recommended adding an annual section defining the budget amendment process. The agency concurred in part, disagreeing with the requirement that all budget amendments be submitted by October 31st.
Adopt.
On page 21, action 10, DLS recommended adding an annual section requiring maintenance of accounting systems for certain programs. The agency concurred.
Adopt.
Page 24, action 11, DLS recommended adding a section restricting funds in certain agency budgets pending timely submission of fiscal 26 budget amendments. The agency disagreed.
Adopt.
On page 25, action 12, DLS recommended striking language reducing funds contingent on eliminating the requirement to print budget books. The agency disagreed.
Adopt.
On page 26, action 13, DLS recommended restricting funds pending a report on American Rescue Plan Act funding. The agency concurred.
Adopt.
On page 27, action 14, DLS recommended adopting annual narrative requesting submission of budget details for contracts and grants.
Adopt.
There are also actions in the additional page packet for your consideration. On page 2, this is additional language restricting funds in DBM requiring a review of cybersecurity governance and procedures in specified large agencies.
Adopt.
On page 4, this is language restricting funds in DBM to ensure that agencies with certain repeat audit findings collaborate with the state chief information security officer to resolve and report on those findings.
Adopt.
On page 5, this is additional narrative requesting a report on registered apprenticeship position capacity within state agencies.
You sure about this? Adopt.
Now moving to the Department of Budget and Management Personnel on page 28 of the decision document packet. Action 1, DLS recommended reducing funds for salary step expansions. The agency disagreed.
Reject.
For items 2 through 6, these are all annual recommendations that the agency concurred with, so we recommend doing a consent calendar for these items. Adopt. Item 7 on page 35. DLS recommended adding a section reducing general funds in DPSES due to special fund availability in the Senior Prescription Drug Affordability Program Fund. This provides general fund savings, and the agency concurs.
Adopt.
On page 35, Action 8, DLS recommended adding annual language restricting funds due to 4 or more repeat audit findings, and the agency concurred.
Adopt.
Page 37, Action 9, DLS recommended adopting annual committee narrative requesting the department to submit closeout information on the employee and retiree health insurance account.
Adopt.
On page 38, Action 10, DLS recommended adopting committee narrative requesting submission of quarterly reports on prescription, medical, and dental plans, including an analysis of reporting methodologies, and the agency concurred.
Adopt.
On page 39, Action 11, DLS recommended adopting committee narrative requesting a report detailing the Government Modernization Initiative. The agency concurred.
Adopt.
On page 41, for the State Retirement Agency, DLS recommended concurring with the governor's allowance, and the agency concurred.
Concur.
On page 42, for the Maryland Supplemental Retirement Plans, DLS recommended concurring with the governor's allowance, and the agency concurred.
On page 43 begins actions relating to the Developmental Disabilities Administration. The first recommendation is to add language requesting a report on community services spending data. The agency concurred but requested the deadlines be extended by 2 weeks.
Yep, we're good. Yep. Yes. Concur. With the change.
Concur with the extended deadlines.
Yes.
On page 45, the second recommendation is to add language requesting a report on LTSS service utilization trends, and the agency concurred.
Concur.
Second.
Or adopt.
On page 46, recommendation 3 adds language requesting a report on the implementation of cost containment actions. The agency did not respond. However, I do have items for consideration in the additional page packet, the white additional page packet.
This is the one labeled Developmental Disabilities Administration, additional
Okay.
pages.
So page 1 adds 23.1 million general funds and specifies the cost containment actions that DDA is authorized to implement in fiscal 2027.
We're going to concur with this, but I think it probably warrants saying a few words. So this has been probably one of 2 big issues this year, and the other being energy, which we'll get to later. So this implements what a lot of folks behind the scenes have been talking for a long time, and of course we've been taking into account. We've had meetings with advocates. There was a list of cost containment measures that were presented at the beginning of session. Each one of those was analyzed, taken apart, thought about with the administration, with the House, and with our folks. At the end of the day, some new ideas came out. There's some new cost containment measures in here. Some of the old ones that were originally presented aren't included in this. And at the bottom line was that to make the $150 million mark, to close the gap that we had, we used about, I think it's about 126 million in cost containment measures. We did not go the full 150. Instead, we chose to bring in $23 million. I think that's the front part of this, right? It's about $23 million to close the gap. So the full 100%, $150 million is closed with as I said, the portion of cost containment, and then just general funds that we've added for this purpose in the budget. So that's essentially what has occurred. I can tell you that this was probably one of the more challenging issues that we've ever undertaken. We know how important this community is, and we know how difficult some of these choices were. As I said, we had, I think, a lot of cooperation between House, the Senate, and the administration, as well as a number of advocacy groups, representatives from them participated in the process to go through it. I can tell you that all of these solutions in here would probably be defined by just about everybody in the process as the least bad of all the choices, and that's what we were shooting for. And I believe that we've reached that, and that is what you see before you. So approval of this page.
On the next page, on page 3 of the additional page packet, this modifies that DLS recommendation on the cost containment report to reflect the specified actions.
Move to adopt.
Second.
And then one more item on the additional page packet. On page 5, this language specifies the policy that DDA should use to guide the enforcement of the cost containment action related to dedicated hours.
Move to adopt.
Back to the decision document on page 48. Recommendation 3 adds language restricting funds in the community services program to that purpose only.
I'm sorry, what number are you on?
Number 4 on page 48.
Adopt.
Second.
Recommendation 5 on that same page is to adopt narrative requesting a report on person-centered plan review processing times.
Adopt.
Second.
On page 50 is the public debt. DLS recommendation is to concur. Agency concurred.
Concur.
Next on page 51 for the State Reserve Fund. Action 1, DLS recommended reducing funds for legislative priorities so they can be added back as desired, and the agency concurred.
Adopt.
Again on 51, item 2, DLS recommended adding a section restricting funds in DBM and the Office of the Comptroller pending submission of a report identifying the purpose to which funds are returned to the DPA. DBM disagreed, and a response was not provided by the Comptroller.
Adopt.
Second.
And on page 52, action 3 is technical and conforms to action 1.
Adopt.
Turning to the last page of the yellow packet, there's some language here within the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy, and this would require that all state aid for police protection funding be distributed to a law enforcement agency only after GOCPP confirms the agency is compliant with state law related to immigration enforcement agreements.
I think we're going to hold on this, and we can adjust this in the BRFA. Yes?
Do you want to vote on it as a BRFA item now?
Sure.
Everybody?
Sure. Yep. So this will go into the BRFA, not into the budget. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. All right. What do we got next?
So next, we're going to turn to the BRFA. There are 3 packages related to the BRFA. There's a lilac BRFA that goes through all the items. There's a, I'm going to call it salmon package with additional pages, and then there's a pink package as well. I'm going to be starting with the lilac pages. Item 1 in the BRFA would reduce the mandate for the Maryland Healthy Soils Program from $500,000 to $400,000.
Adopt. Second. Yeah, and jump in anytime if needed.
Item 2 would repeal the mandates related to the Native Plants Program.
Reject. Second.
Item 3 expands the allowable uses of the Cannabis Business Assistance Fund through fiscal 2029 to fund costs related to the Department of Social and Economic Mobility.
Adopt. Second.
Item 4 reduces the mandate by $300,000 for the Tri-County Council for Southern Maryland.
What do you think of that one, Senator Bailey? Should we reject that?
We want the 300,000.
Yeah, so we want to reject this.
Item 5 eliminates the mandate for the Lacrosse Opportunities Program.
Adopt. Second.
Item 6 reduces the mandate for the Coordinated Community Sports Partnership Fund by $20 million.
Reject.
Item 7 caps the growth for the community colleges under the CADE funding formula by 3% for fiscal 27 through 29. And there is also on page 1 and 2 of the additional page package, this would just for fiscal 27, this would take the reduction directly, and you could still adopt the BRFA package, BRFA item to do it for 3 years.
So you're on 7 now, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I do want to go back just for a second because we blew by that last one pretty quickly just because it's pretty interesting. And this is something that the House has agreed with. We are going to have the full amount for these community services, mental health services in all our schools at the full amount, the $100 million amount. It was an early decision amongst the houses, and I'm pretty pleased with that one. All right, so do we need to go to pages on number 7?
Yeah, so item 7 caps the growth for 3 years. Pages 1 and 2 also just take the reduction directly in fiscal 27. You could still adopt the BRFA provision to do it for 3 years.
Yeah, just makes it all go together. So we move it up, I would adopt the language and the pages.
Item 8 reduces the, or alters the funding formula for BCCC by reducing the percentage that they receive of the per full-time equivalent student for the 4-year institutions beginning in fiscal 2027. This provision is permanent.
Okay, so we're going to modify that to make the change for just 3 years.
The next item on page 2, item 9, would for 3 years cap the funding for the Sellinger program at the fiscal 2026 level. It specifies the amount per institution. On page 3 of the additional pages, for fiscal 27, this would take the reduction directly. You could still do the BRFA provision to do it for 3 years.
Okay. Adopt the additional.
Second.
The next item, item 10, is related to the Community College Promise Scholarship. It would reduce the mandate permanently beginning in fiscal 27. Additional page 4 would reduce the funds in fiscal 2027, but it would not reduce the funds moving forward.
Right. So adopt page 4, but reject the language. We want to keep it, we're just going to do this for 1 year and see how it goes.
Item 11 is reducing the mandate for the loan assistance repayment program for the police officers and probation agents by $1.5 million beginning in fiscal 2027. On page 5 of the additional pages, this reduces the funding in the fiscal 27 budget directly, but would still allow you to do the permanent mandate reduction.
So adopt the language and the additional page. Sure. We can take that vote right now. So are you interested in voting on the language and the additional page 5?
We want to, well, because the language is just, what, 1 year? Is that what you said?
The language is taking the reduction in fiscal 27, and then the BRFA does it permanently.
Right. Yeah, we don't like that.
Okay. So all those in favor of the adoption of the language and the paper, aye? You have a question first?
I do have a question. This is adoption of page 5, right?
Correct.
Can we talk about the use of that money?
You can?
Okay, can an analyst provide us with information about the use of this program?
Yeah, the program has been really underutilized, and I believe in fiscal 25, they did not give out any of the loan. They gave out one in fiscal 25.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so now on the vote, all's in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Okay. Item 12 reduces the mandate for the police officer probation agent scholarship program by $1.5 million, and page 6 in the additional pages also takes the reduction directly, but would allow you to permanently reduce the mandate as well.
Okay. All right, so all those in favor of adopting the language and the paper, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, let's move on.
Okay. Item 13 expands the allowable uses of the Advanced Directive Program Fund to include $1 million to support maternal and child health quality initiatives in fiscal 2027 only.
Adopt.
Second.
Item 14 phases in a local cost share for the assisted outpatient treatment program beginning in fiscal 2028. It would phase up through fiscal 2031.
Adopt.
Second.
Item 15 reduces the mandate for the tobacco use prevention programs from 8.25 to 17.52 million.
Adopt.
Second.
Item 16 on page 3 expands the allowable uses of the Board of Physicians Fund to include $2 million to support the Office of Population Health Improvement. It's the loan assistance repayment program. It does it for 1 year only.
Adopt.
Item 17 expands the allowable uses of the State Board of Professional Counselors and Therapists funds for by $500,000 of fund balance to support provider reimbursements in the Behavioral Health Administration for fiscal 27 only.
Adopt.
Second.
Item 18 reduces the mandate for the Public Safety Apprenticeship Program from $750,000 to $390,000. This would begin in fiscal 2026.
Adopt.
Item 19 reduces the mandate for the Career Pathways for Healthcare Workers program from $500,000 to $350,000 beginning in fiscal 27.
Adopt.
Second.
Item 20 would suspend the disparity grant formula and instead provide the funding at the fiscal 26 level for 3 years.
Reject.
Item 21 reduces the mandate for the Prince George's County Reentry Employment Incentive Program by $150,000. This has a 2-year impact because the mandate ends after fiscal 28.
Adopt.
For item 22, this eliminates for 2 years only, a mandate from the Waterway Improvement Fund to a historic preservation nonprofit.
This is 22. 22, reject.
On page 4, as introduced, the BRFA includes a provision to expand the allowable uses of the 911 trust fund to include operations of MDEM. In item 23, DBM alt, they have recommended striking the provision. There's issues related to the federal law.
So we'll strike the provision by adopting 23. Alt.
Item 24 would reduce the mandate for the small commercial project trust account by $1.5 million beginning in fiscal 27. The mandate ends after fiscal 2031. Additional page 7 would reduce the funds in fiscal 2027 only.
Okay, so let's reject the language and adopt page 7.
Item 25 repeals the requirement that the governor print the budget books. DLS recommended striking the provision.
We're going to strike the provision by adopting 25 alt.
Item 26.
We get the books. We're keeping the books. Some of us, didn't have computers when we were born.
Item 26 would suspend for 1 year only the requirement to appropriate surplus to the rainy day fund. And page 8 would also take the reduction directly in the budget.
Okay, adopt both of those provisions.
Item 27 eliminates for 1 year only the requirement that the governor appropriate funds from the Cigarette Restitution Fund to the Community Health Resources Commission Fund. On page 9 of the additional pages, DLS has recommended increasing the amount of the contingent reduction, which was $1 million to $2 million based on the fund balance in the Community Health Resources Commission Fund. The agency concurred.
Okay, we'll adopt both those provisions.
Item 28 expands the allowable uses of the separate account within the Cigarette Restitution Fund for the amounts in excess of $35 million in fiscal 27 only.
Adopt.
I think you'll want to hold items 29 DLS alt, 30, 31 DLS alt, and 30 DLS alt 2 until later in the later at the end. So moving ahead to 31 on page 7. As introduced, the BRFA reduces the participation targets for the Maryland Core Young Adult Service Year Option Pathway in fiscal 27 and 28. DLS recommended further delaying the participation growth, and DLS also, along with that, on page 10, had recommended reducing funds consistent with the provision that DLS recommended.
So are we on,
Item 31 and 31
and the alt?
Yeah.
So we're going to adopt 31, but then reject the alt and reject page 10.
On the next item, 32, the provision as introduced shifts 50% of the growth between 26 and 27 in the state share of the cost to related to the teacher retirement, community college retirement, and librarians. And the DLS alternative was to shift 100% of the increase. Pages 11 through 13 of the additional page package go along with the DLS recommendation.
Okay, I'm going to move to adopt. Want to vote?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so on 32, the motion is to adopt. All's in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Okay, so, and then you'll reject 32 DLS alt and the additional pages.
So moved.
Second.
Do they need to? Will they, I'm just trying to make sure they got their votes consistent, quite frankly. No, 32 we adopted, and you voted against it. Do we need to, do they need to reject my motion or no?
So if you adopt 32, you would by default be rejecting 32 DLS alt because it's an expanded purpose.
Okay.
Or expanded.
Okay.
Item 33 and 33 DLS alt. So this relates to a provision in the BRFA from last year that provided some additional general funds to the Division of Paid Leave with the delay in the family program. There was a technical correction related to how the transfer from the local income tax reserve account that supported that was needed. DLS identified an additional technical correction related to the date of the transfer.
Yep. So adopt and then modify with the alt.
Second.
And then in 33 DLS alt, the governor's budget plan as introduced assumed $150 million of revenue from the local income tax reserve account related to kind of an over allocation to the account in fiscal 2026. The budget plan assumed that there wasn't a provision to implement that action. There are additional funds available related to an over allocation that you could also transfer in, I believe it's $380 million.
Yes, modify to increase to 380. Okay.
Item 34 relates to a redirection for fiscal 27 only of transfer tax revenue to the general fund and also transferring some funds from reserve account. If you are interested in not doing this transfer, there is language on page 14 that would specify a particular use for a portion of those funds.
So we'll reject and adopt page 14.
Item 35 reduces the mandate for the urban agriculture, water, and power infrastructure grant by $100,000.
Adopt.
Item 36 expands the allowable uses of the MEMS fund, or I should say it continues an expansion of the allowable uses of the MEMSOP fund to support general operations of the Aviation Command through fiscal 2029.
Adopt.
Item 37 repeals the requirement that $2 million from the uninsured motorist penalty fund be distributed to drivers at the Driver Education and Public High Schools Fund
Reject.
annually.
Second.
Item 38 would require a portion of the POS funds to be used to support the operations and maintenance of the Jefferson Patterson Park and Museum.
Reject. Second.
Item 39 requires the Heritage Conservation Fund and other funds appropriated to the POS state side be included as part of the POS state land acquisition balance.
Adopt.
Item 40 would permanently decouple from a provision in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act related to depreciation allowances for qualified production property.
Adopt.
Item 41 also relates to decoupling, partially decoupling from a provision in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act related to depreciation for certain manufacturing entities.
Adopt.
Item 42 on page 10 repeals a requirement that the Department of Health apply to the federal agency for inclusion in the Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinic demonstration program, and instead authorizes the application and delays the timeline by which that would happen.
Reject.
Item 43 authorizes funds that were restricted in the fiscal 2018 budget but unexpended from the POS State Land Acquisition Fund to be used for other purposes.
Adopt.
I think you'll want to hold 44 and 44 DLS alt. So moving to 45 and 45 DLS or DBM alt. The provision as introduced would authorize a transfer of $187.6 million from the Fiscal Responsibility Fund to the General Fund in fiscal 26. The DBM alternative was to reduce that transfer because there's a portion of those funds that are appropriated in fiscal 2026. On page 21 and 22 of the additional pages, this would have two BRFA actions. It would expand the allowable uses of the Fiscal Responsibility Fund in fiscal 27 only. For fiscal 26 only, to be used for major IT projects. And it would further reduce the transfer from the Fiscal Responsibility Fund. That would allow you then to reduce the general funds and the fiscal 27 allowance from the major IT fund by about $59.3 million. And then what's shown on page 22 is adding the funds, that same amount of funds from the Fiscal Responsibility Fund in fiscal 2026.
Okay, so we're going to modify with the additional pages.
Okay.
Second.
I think we'll cover item 46 and 46 DBM alt in a little bit. So moving to item 47 on page 11. The BRFA is introduced, authorized a transfer of $10 million from the Loan Assistance Repayment Program for nurses and nursing support staff in fiscal 26. The DBM alternative was to correct the fund that was intended to be part of that transfer to the Nurse Support Program Assistance Fund.
Modify with the alt.
Item 48 would authorize a transfer of $2 million from the Performance Incentive Grant Fund to the General Fund in fiscal '26.
Adopt.
Second.
Item 49 includes, authorizes a transfer of about $1 million from the dedicated purpose account to the general fund in fiscal '26. These are from a variety of funds that were added or were in the dedicated purpose account in fiscal 2023 but have not been expended.
Adopt.
Second.
49 DLS Alt would provide some additional transfers from the dedicated purpose account totaling $1.1 million for 3 purposes, including the comptroller, cybersecurity, state government, modernizing human resources practices, and food banks.
Okay, so we're going to modify that to only transfer items 2 and 3.
Second.
On page 12, item 50 authorizes a transfer from the Maternal and Child Health Population Improvement Fund in fiscal '27.
Object.
Second.
Item 51 authorizes a transfer of $70 million from the Bay Restoration Fund to the General Fund in fiscal '27 and requires them to be replaced with general obligation bonds.
Adopt.
Second.
Item 52 authorizes a transfer of $13.1 million from the Waterway Improvement Fund. If you turn to page 15 of the additional pages, this would reduce the amount of funds that are transferred from the Waterway Improvement Fund.
Okay, we're going to modify with the additional page.
Second.
Item 53 alters the allowable uses of $3 million that were restricted in the fiscal '26 budget in the Department of General Services to be used for reopening the Noyes Children's Center as an adolescent drug treatment center to instead provide drug treatment services at other youth-serving facilities and reopen Noyes as a facility for children.
Adopt.
Second.
Item 54 prohibits the use of funds in fiscal '27 to provide rate increases for non-public placement providers.
Object.
Item 55 prohibits the use of funds in fiscal '27 to provide rate increases for providers whose rates are set by the Interagency Rates Committee.
Adopt.
Second.
On page 13, item 56 authorizes the Interagency Commission on School Construction to reallocate funds from fiscal '22 and '23 related to HVAC upgrades for public schools to ensure compliance with rules related to the stimulus funding.
Adopt.
Second.
Item 57, DBM additional would eliminate the mandate for the open source phonics matching grant program.
Reject.
Second.
Item 58 expands the authorized uses of the funds for the African American Heritage Preservation Grant Fund to include non-capital projects. If you're interested in adopting this, we would recommend that it be clarified to that the funds for non-capital purposes are on top of the mandate for the capital purposes.
Okay, we'll adopt that as you described.
Second.
Item 59 alters the mandate for the Title IX representation proceedings program to be a mandate to the program rather than the fund.
Adopt.
Second.
Item 60, DBM additional would authorize a transfer of $1 million from the non-depository institution fund to the general fund in fiscal *26.
Adopt.
Second.
Item 61, DBM additional would authorize a transfer of $600,000 from the state aided institutions field trip fund to the general fund in fiscal '26.
Reject.
Second.
Item 101, DLS additional would would have a reduction of the student loan debt relief tax credit, the maximum amount that MHEC could approve from 18 million to 9 million in tax year 2026. Last year's BRFA provided a requirement that they submit a report with recommendations by January 1. The report wasn't submitted, so this also would require them to submit the report by December 1.
Adopt. Second.
101 DBM alternative, they recommended the cap for 2025 be eliminated.
We're going to move to cap this at 16 million.
On page 14, DLS recommended reducing the mandated growth in the per pupil special education funding formula to a growth rate of 5% from fiscal 27 through 2030. An additional page 16 is a reduction that would occur in the budget if you adopted that provision.
We're going to just reject all of that.
Item 103 reduces the required distribution from the state lottery fund to the major sports and entertainment event program fund by $5 million.
Reject.
Item 104, DLS additional would authorize a transfer of $2 million from the Police Training and Standards Commission Fund to the general fund in fiscal 2026.
Adopt. Second.
Item 105 would reduce the mandate for the Equitech Growth Fund from $5 million to $3 million beginning in fiscal 2028.
Reject. Second.
Item 106 relates to an action that was taken in the budget in fiscal 26. You reduce the amount of funding appropriated for the Racing and Community Development Financing Fund. This would reduce the required distribution to be consistent with that.
Adopt. Second.
Item 107, DLS additional, was a recommendation to delay the expansion of the Tier 2 full-day pre-kindergarten eligibility by capping the eligibility at 360% of the federal poverty level for fiscal 27 and reducing the per pupil funding level in fiscal 2027 only. Page 17 of the additional pages would modify that to not change the per pupil funding amount, but cap at 450% the Tier 2 expansion.
Adopt. Second. Oh, no. Yeah, did we even talk about 18?
Oh, yeah, sorry, apologize. Page 18 was the recommendation that went along with the original provision. So if you are interested in page 17, you would reject page 18.
Okay, reject. Second.
Item 108, DLS additional. This also relates to a action in the budget from fiscal 26. It restricted funds from the Child Care Capital Support Revolving Loan Fund to be used by the Health Benefit Exchange for an outreach campaign and survey. That was completed. The funds are not authorized to be used for that purpose, so this would authorize the uses of those funds in fiscal 2026 only to support that activity.
Adopt. Second.
Item 109, DLS additional would make changes to the More Jobs for Marylanders program by capping the annual amount that can be awarded and establish a sunset date and change the how the transfers occur from the reserve fund. If you are interested in that provision, item 19 is a reduction that would be made to the program based on that provision.
Reject all of that?
Second.
Item 110, DLS additional, would change the funding for the Maryland State Arts Council beginning in fiscal 2028 to permanently fund it at the fiscal 26 working level based on increasing by projected general fund growth.
Reject.
Second.
Item 111, DLS additional, would repeal a mandated distribution from the state admissions and amusement tax revenue to the State Arts Council and redirect the revenue to the general fund. Additional page 20 was a reduction that would go along with that.
Reject both.
Second.
Item 112, DLS additional, was a recommendation to sunset the film production activity tax credit.
Reject. Second.
Item 113 would sweep unused general fund supported appropriation for non-income-based financial assistance programs to the general fund instead of the need-based student financial assistance fund.
Reject.
Second.
Item 114 would sweep unused special fund supported appropriation for the Teaching Fellows Scholarship Program to the Blueprint for Maryland's Future Fund, which is the source of the special fund appropriation instead of the need-based student financial assistance fund.
Reject.
Second.
Page 23 of the additional pages. Would delay the implementation of the centralized collection of the hotel rental tax for short-term rentals by 1 year.
Adopt.
Page 24 and 25 would repeal a requirement for a 3-year retention of certain monitoring data in statute.
Adopt.
And then I think we'll turn to the pink package. On page 1 of this package, so this provides information or provides the alternative compliance payment uses in the budget. The first column provides the information or provides what is in the budget as introduced. The administration amended plan has a couple changes to that related to a proposed change by DBM of the amounts that would be transferred from the alternative compliance payment fund balance and the an administration account from the RGGI supported funds. The Senate column provides changes to the use of those funds and would also require changes in the BRFA as well as changes in how the funds are allocated in the budget. And then, so what the funds would be used for in the budget. So I'll just walk through those items, the rest of the package.
Can I just stop for just a second? Because I'm just glancing through these. And a lot of them have to, I think, have to do with energy. We were holding them before from the budget.
We were holding them to do kind of all together with this package.
Yeah, and this package, though, also has state highways and some other things in it, too.
So that relates to where the funds were budgeted originally. So the The package would, the rest of the package, so the first page kind of summarizes the package, and I'll walk through that. The rest of
So we're moving into the SEEF stuff now?
Yeah, we're moving
Okay,
into the SEEF stuff.
And that's what I wanted to clarify.
Yep.
And just to be clear, I know that House Committee took this up yesterday, I think yesterday, last night, on this package, and I believe it may be probably over by now, but there was a press conference going on talking about this package with the House and the Senate and the governor. That altogether is what this is,
Yep.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll walk through the first page. The rest of the pages would just kind of conform the budget actions to what's on this first page. So at the top of the page, as introduced, the budget provided $100 million for rate relief credits and the Public Service Commission. This would alter the use of the $100 million to support the Empower Maryland residential kind of down payment on the program costs. It would also provide funds that would be used to offset costs, ratepayer costs for the limited income discount program. These would be authorized uses in the other legislation. In the Maryland Energy Administration, there was $100 million related to gap financing for a solar stabilization fund. The amended plan would have used only $70 million for that purpose. The other $30 million would have been supported by RGGI-supported SEEF. This would provide no funds for that purpose. The provision related to that would be struck from the BRFA. It would instead, the $100 million would be used for a grant program that would be a reverse auction for new renewable energy and energy storage. Again, that would be authorized in the other legislation. It would also provide $2 million, which is on top of funds that are already provided in the budget for a residential and commercial energy storage program. That the use for that purpose would also be in the other legislation. The budget as introduced in the BRFA also included an authorization to use $10 million in the State Highway Administration related to studies and planning for locating transmission lines along existing right-of-ways on highways. This would strike that provision from the BRFA and also the budget. The next item would be new and would provide funding of $10 million in the Interagency Commission on School Construction, capital funding for HVAC upgrades in public schools. This would also be authorized in the other legislation. For the Maryland Department of the Environment, this would also be new funding authorized in the other legislation that would be costs related to implementing certain permitting requirements that are included in Senate Bill 781. The Department of General Services, as introduced and under this plan, would provide $20 million for solar on state facilities. That authorization would stay in the BRFA. In the dedicated purpose account, there was $42 million for higher education research grants. As introduced, it was going to be used to assist in transitioning to energy and climate. This would modify that provision and the language in the budget to say that the funds can be used for any research, not just energy and climate. There were other authorizations in the dedicated purpose account that would be struck from the BRFA and the funding in the dedicated purpose account. That was to implement the Chapter 7 and 19 of the 2025 special session and also provide funding for the grid enhancing technologies. It would also relate to the transfers from the alternative compliance payment funds to the general fund. It would leave it at the $259 million instead of the increased amount that DBM presented at the BRFA hearing. And also, then you would want to keep the transfer from the administration account at $33 million because you would need the funding from the ACP to support the activities. As I mentioned, the rest of the package provides the language that would authorize the use, would add the funds for the new purposes, contingent on the other legislation, making those authorized uses, expanding the uses of the Higher Education Research Fund, and then making other conforming changes to the budget, and also rejecting some DLS recommendations related to that wouldn't be applicable anymore. You would also want to withdraw a piece of narrative that was in the PST subcommittee report that was related to the use of the funds for the grid enhancing technologies, because those funds would no longer be provided for that purpose.
Okay, I'll get to you in a second, Senator. So if we adopt this page 1 and conform that to the budget actions, will we need to go back to the other sheets?
You need to go back for only to address some provisions that are related to a different portion of CEF, but not any of the alternative compliance payments. That would all be handled through this.
Okay, so we're going to go back to the BRFA pages for that, what you just described, and we're going to be accepting all of these pages, correct?
You would be conforming.
Or are we going to go through them individually?
You would just conform. We'll just conform. If you adopt this first page, we'll conform the rest of the pages to that action, as well as withdrawing the committee narrative that's no longer needed.
Okay. Senator Stallings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to the Maryland Energy Administration, with the added $2 million, is that a part of the $100 million itself, or is that an add-on to that?
That would be, it's additional to the $100 million.
Thank you.
Okay.
For a separate purpose.
So I'm going to move that we adopt this, page 1, and conform to the budget actions and the changes.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Okay.
On page 5 of the lilac pages, these would be the last two of the BRFA actions. This relates to the RGGI portions of CEF. It included, as introduced, included some provisions modifying the purposes to include strengthening the state's climate mitigation and climate resiliency, as well as provisions related to the support of the environmental review related to certificates of public convenience and necessity in the power plant research program. The DBM alternative would just replace that portion with additional kind of clarifying language related to the authorization related to the power plant research program. And there's a variety of general fund and special fund contingent appropriations related to that.
Okay, so we're on page 5, items 29 and 29 alt, and we're going to adopt but modify with the alt. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay.
And that would be all for the BRFA.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the last topic is the ads. I think the staff are going to hand the list out.
So this is part of what we have every year, our ads, the Senate ads, and actually as it's listed in here, the first page essentially are ads that the House and Senate have agreed to split. And just obvious, the one at the top. So our highest ad this year is with the Developmental Disabilities Administration to deal with the fact that we didn't make the full 150 million of cost containment, and this is the remainder that backfills it to 150. But a lot of these are standard ones that we do over the years. Domestic violence, certain programs that we've agreed to share. We've got the George board on here. It's number 5 in the shared. So the second one actually is pretty good. We're going to be upping the number of folks who are going to be able to qualify in a program for the Child Care Scholarship Program. So if anybody has any questions that need to maybe be corrected later, we can always work on these in conference if there's an issue. We've done our very best to try to accommodate good programs all across the state. And I think we have an amendment.
Yes, we have an amendment, Chairman. I move to add a grant to the Dwyer Workforce Program, $250,000.
Okay. All in favor of the add?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. With that, I will move that we accept the ads, both shared and Senate.
Second.
All's in favor? Opposed? Okay. What else do we have?
I think you just need to vote on the budget bill and the BRFA.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of the, sorry?
Was discussed before with DLS, that last page that was added earlier, that is going on with BRFA?
That is going to
correct?
BRFA. That's
All right.
correct.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep. Okay. All those in favor of the budget?
Aye.
As amended. Opposed? Okay. And in favor of the BRFA as amended?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We're all set? That was it?
Yes, sir. You completed all the work in 2 hours.
Well, we did it in 2 hours. We made it, and we're going to make the floor. Of course, we've got to do still the capital budget. And before we leave, I just want to thank you, Ms. Bromans and team, and all your team, the department. I want to thank certainly the administration, who's been absolutely terrific to work with. Pleased to have our secretary in the position he's in. We've been very cooperative on many things, and could not have gotten to this place without him and his team and the legislative office on the DD issue. Just terrific all around. Of course, our staff in our office here, our team, who are always awesome. And our administrative staff, our own personal staffs, just really pleased. President's office, Jody, always chirping in my ear. I don't think I missed anybody, maybe somewhere along the line, but this is really a group effort and team effort, and I certainly appreciate all the members. We got through at least this part, another one for the year. So thank you all very much. And that, we are concluded.